Hey folks, Steve here with a monitor side chat video for you for June 2021. Gonna kind of take some time to talk about a few oddball topics since I am done with Deadly Woods and I'm getting ready to start recording the Dark Summer coverage that I have planned. It made sense to sit down for a few minutes and just kind of talk about a few odds and end things that I thought would be interesting to talk about. So this video, like the previous monitor side chat, will probably work okay if you're just listening to this as audio with other stuff going on and you're not paying attention to the video feed. That's okay. It should mostly work for audio as well. But we're just going to take a stroll through a few different topics. I will put those in the title, so as you're clicking this video, you probably have a good idea of what we're going to cover. We're going to be talking about the nature of series games and what does that really mean, and the different ways that manifests, and how certain types might be better for certain types of players given their personal circumstances. We'll talk a little bit about the OCS system, which I know there are folks who watch the channel that are into OCS. I know Peter, who sometimes watches and comments out there, plays both World in Flames and OCS. And I know there's some desire for me to do OCS stuff, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then I want to talk a little bit about complexity as something that we just deal with in the games that we play, and what does that really mean when we deal with high complexity games, and how do we deal with that across the board. But we'll talk about a couple other things here as we go. Wanted to show for a second the Compass Games storefront for a second, and since the last time I've recorded a chat like this, they've published just recently some updates to sort of their product pipeline. I suspect we're going to get a GMT monthly newsletter here soon, but the recording of this video just doesn't line up. But we're talking about a couple of things here. I just want to show they did add that the NATO the Cold War Goes Hot signature or designer signature edition, whatever, reprint is set to release on July 7th. They've done a Kickstarter page for that just to kind of help get another influx of orders as this is being put together and sent to people who have purchased it. I am awaiting my copy. There was a thing that went on, gosh, it was a couple years ago now, I think, maybe a year and a half, where something was goofy with the Compass pre-order system, and everybody who had a stable, sitting, static pre-order that was not meant to be charged until later got charged, and so I ended up getting this really huge charge on my card for pre-orders a while back, and it was like, oh, well, we can refund you, or, if you're okay with it, we'll just, say you paid. And I said, well, I'm good with it being paid, though I don't have, because of all the system changes, I don't necessarily have a hard receipt anymore for that, but so I should be getting this. I'm pretty sure I should be getting this. This was on my pre-order list that I got charged for, and I will be interested in checking it out. The Kickstarter page has a bunch of information on here about it and for it. It's a bigger game, 2 maps put together, 4 counter sheets, so not so bad in terms of counters. Lots of player aid sheets, all sorts of stuff here. And, obviously they put a lot of great material out here on the Kickstarter page for you to kind of check out and see what the deal is. This is a game that is older, has been around for a while. Had been originally published back in the 80s, I want to say. I'm pretty sure. I don't have the numbers right in front of me. It might be on here somewhere and I just rolled past it. I don't know. So we'll be getting that. I don't know how soon I will get this to the table or show it, but it is something that is kind of cool that I'll be picking up, and we'll see what happens with that. I'll probably at least do an unboxing video. Now they've got some other stuff. They've kind of shown what's coming in the months ahead into 2021. The War series, both the Europe reprint and the Pacific game, are going to be coming out. Now, I'm not really familiar with these games. You can see, it's a strategic World War II game, so you can play the Pacific and play Europe, I think, at the same time. Yeah, maybe combined with Europe. This is one of those things. It's like, hey, if you really like World in Flames, or you like A World at War, or maybe you like Totaler Krieg, um, this is another one in the ring to play. I don't know much about it. I have a friend who's played it, and it's been a while. I've not asked him what his real thoughts are, but you can see we're talking pretty big hexes, so very much strategic in nature. Probably less of an operational feel than maybe some other games. Yeah, so some example stuff. So not much to say about that. I probably will not be playing these. I don't know about that. And then everything else is sort of unknown. I'm not sure I'll be picking any of these up, just because I'm picking up a lot of stuff, and I'll cover that here shortly. So their pre-order list is basically the same, and then their recent releases, stuff that you probably already know about. I'm super tempted by South China Sea in the Indian Ocean region. There's just something about the topic and the look of everything that just really draws me in, and I would really like to play this. So I'm on the edge of wanting to pick these up. I just don't know that, in terms of my gaming budget, if I can really stretch it. But I am very tempted, both for South China Sea and the Indian region stuff. This one doesn't have a map preview, but it just sounds very intriguing. I'm very interested, and it seems like sort of a naval air focused thing, adjacent to GMT's Next War series, which coincidentally enough we'll be talking about here very shortly. So just a couple of things I wanted to bring to your guys' attention. The other important thing, and I can't remember how long this is going on, for those of you who watch my Korea Fire and Ice series, and the game intrigued you, or you thought, hey, maybe I want to get this game, it is currently on sale. So ordinarily the normal price is $85. It is at a reduced price down to $50. I'm not sure for how long that will be for. I think I have an email about that from Compass Games where they say how long the sale will be for. I apologize for not bringing that up, my bad, but now's your chance. If you would like to get this game much more cheaply than full cost, now would be the time to do it. I know in my review I sort of had indicated, for folks who already had it, to take another look, or maybe you can get it on a secondary market. The fact that it's on sale is a good time, that if you wanted to make that jump, here you go. And I would recommend, if you do pick it up, to check out the 3.0 rules that are available online, and check Board Game Geek for my unofficial errata document that helps fill in a few other cracks. So there you go. The other thing, I guess, is worth calling out is that the other OSS title, the second game in the series, is also on a sale. So it is not $90 or $89, it is $55. It is the same basic sale as Korea Fire and Ice. Now, I have not played this one yet. I have a copy. I do have it. I think I had used a winter Christmas holiday sale to purchase my copy. So I can't tell you if it's good or not. I really can't say. I do have this on my to-do list to show and to play and see how well it compares to other stuff. But so I can't necessarily recommend this one or not, or say if it's good or bad, but it is on sale for $55 compared to $89. So if you were on a knife's edge before, this might be the time to pick that up. So just to call out again, I can't remember how long this sale will be in effect, but something to keep in mind. Okay, well, I think that's just some basic stuff I wanted to cover, and we can start talking about the next topic, or I'm going to start rambling about the next topic, which is series games. And I don't think it would really surprise anyone to say that when you're into a series that you like, what's great about it from I guess a player perspective is that, you know, if you play one game and you like it, you have a pretty good feeling that you're gonna like and play the next game in the series, right? I mean that's fairly logical, um, but hmm. Sorry, I'm tripping over myself here because I just got an alert on my phone. I had to check, but no big deal. So let me explain what I'm trying to get at. So I think within the context of series games, to me it seems like there's really two types. I think there's the yes, these games are, and maybe there's more than two, but at least I'm going to focus on two. There's the here are games in a series, like OSS, Korea, Vietnam, the Doomsday games, which I think are not linked on this page, where the basic rules are more or less the same. They follow rules that are very similar to one another, but each game is relatively distinct. The other type of series game, it seems like, is the game system where you basically have a rule book that is published once, used many places, and then you usually have as an addendum a additional game specific rule book that adds just a little bit more rules weight, and then you get to play that game, right? Now the first type that I described are going to be, I think, types that folks are going to be super familiar with, because it's going to be a lot of stuff you probably heard of, right? If you think of the coin series, that would be the first type. You can play a coin game, and you can go to the next coin game knowing that it's going to be similar. The game mechanics are similar, but you will have to learn some rules that are different, that they are different mechanics. You can't just assume that because it works one way in one game, it works this way in the other. Now, Korea Fire and Ice and Vietnam Rumor of War are like this. They are close, but there are many rulebook differences where you could not simply read the rulebook of one and say it's going to work all exactly the same. There will be certain specific things that may change, and thus you have to read each and every rulebook distinctly. And a great example of that is GMT's Dark series, right? A game series that's very near and dear to my heart, right? Here's the rule book for the Dark Valley, the first game in the series. If we look at the rules, they come out to be 27 pages of rules, which is really not bad, right? That's a relatively thin rule book. The rules cover all the basic stuff, zones of control, reinforcements, what does air power do, how does strategic movement work, stuff specific to Soviets and Axis, of course, how the action phase works, movement, combat, logistics, blah, 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 right? But within 27 pages, you will know, or you'll be able to operate the Dark Valley, which is a great game, by the way, in case you've not heard. Great game. Absolutely great game. So 27 pages, right? You can read this, you will know how to play the Dark Valley. Now, if you were going to move beyond the Dark Valley, and you were going to play, let's say, the recently released Dark Summer, Normandy 1944, and you take a look at the rules, say, okay, it's got 24 pages of rules. It looks like there are some things here, but there's different stuff. There's a whole section on weather. It looks like reinforcements and replacements are a little bit different. Just looking at the table of contents, right? If you're comparing the table of contents one versus the other, you can see there are things that are different. There's no specific air power section of the Dark Summer rules. The action round stuff may be somewhat similar. The movement procedures, combat, you can see there's all kinds of things that are specific to the Dark Summer even, right? There's wave rounds, there's flak units, there's Cherbourg combat, which is something special for this game, right? All these things through here. All a bit different. Different rules for a different game. Now, the thing about this is They are similar. So I knew going into reading this rulebook that the rules were going to be very similar, but I would have to make sure I read from cover to cover the rules to this game so that I don't mistake something, right? And of course, I'm looking at playing the Dark Summer coming right off of the Deadly Woods, where the rules are going to be very similar, but there will be some differences. So you can look at this and say, from a game design cohesion factor, designed by the same guy, doing similar types of things, being chit pull operational games, they are in a family of games. But each game in the Dark series does things differently. They have mechanics that are not in the others. They deal with even the core aspects of the game, like weather or zones of control or movement, stacking, all of that changes from game to game. The stacking limits between the Dark series games is different. It is totally different in some cases, very different. They follow the same sort of design intent, but the specifics of those are different. They are changed, and you have to make sure that if you're going to play one game that you're reading the rules for that game. You cannot switch them out, right? Now, who does that benefit when we would compare this to other types of series games, right? The other type that I described. Well, I think these types of games work. They work, one, because each game is ultimately logically distinct. You could purchase this game. You can respect it for being its own game, its own thing, even if you like the other games in the series. And ultimately, at least in the case of the Dark series, these games are relatively quick playing. I mean, the Dark Valley's a big game, but the Dark Sands, the Dark Summer, the Deadly Woods, rather, those games are relatively quick to play. The mechanics aren't terribly complicated, all coming in at around 24 pages, and it's pretty good to go stuff there. So if you're operating maybe with a small amount of table space, you only have enough space for maybe 2 maps put together at best. You can't leave the game up for a long period of time. Maybe you can only do it for a day or two if you are not fortunate enough to have a dedicated gaming space. Maybe you're borrowing the kitchen table for a couple days kind of situation. These might work well, and if you have the free time, maybe you're not as you're not wealthy in terms of rooms in your house to be able to have a dedicated gaming room, but you have enough free time to focus on reading each rule book for each individual game. You can get a shorter game. You can read the dedicated rules for that game, and play it, and give the table back to everyone else in the house, and you're good to go, right? That can work pretty well. Now, the other type of game series situation is going to be stuff like OCS and Next War, where here is the latest standard and advanced series rules for the Next War series, right? This is from GMT, so GMT publishes both kinds of series games, where every time there's a new game in the series, the standard and advanced series rules gets updated. Now, this doesn't necessarily invalidate the older versions of standard and advanced series rules that say a different game title on them. It is possible that the rules have been updated, or errata has come out and incorporated, where you probably want to be using the latest version of the rules, but between games, let's say from Next War Taiwan 2nd edition to Next War Vietnam, that the standard and advanced series rules will not have changed very much. There will probably be a couple of small changes, but nothing super major will have occurred. And if we look at these rules, this caps out at 44 pages of actual rules, which is fairly weighty, but if you look at the basic standard series rules, it's basically just 22. Now, anyone who likes the Next War series will tell you that the game shines via the advanced series rules. So ultimately, this game really requires you to be familiar with 46 pages of rules. Now, the benefit of this kind of system, and the same thing's going to be for OCS, which I'll show in a second, is that if you really want to get into this series, you can learn these rules by and large, right? And you know that will apply to different game experiences within the series, right? So it's again, read and learn once. Technically, probably more than that if you got to read complicated rules several times. But you're going to learn the rules, and you'll get to apply it more quickly to each new game in the series. And it could get to the point where whenever a new game comes out, so say Next War, whatever's the next one to come, if you or maybe you just picked up Next War Vietnam, but you're an expert in Next War Korea or Next War India Pakistan, Next War Poland. If you've been playing a lot of these games, right, you've got a strong understanding of these 44 pages of rules. You've cemented them in your mind. You know how it works. You still reference the rules like everybody because you're a human being, but you have a strong grasp of these rules. Then all you really need to worry about is these game-specific rules. So in this case here, the game-specific rules for Next War Vietnam are still 30 pages, but ultimately, when you factor in that a lot of these pages are dedicated to the scenarios, you're really just looking at 13 more pages. So altogether, really, to be able to play, and I'll just use this one as an example, if we assume all the rest are pretty close in weight, to learn any individual Next War game in total is going to require you to learn around 60 pages of rules. The reality is, if you actually commit yourself to the series, and you know the series rules very well, and you play the games a lot, anytime a new game comes out, you're really only having to learn or incorporate into your mind as you play the game 10 to 13 pages of new rules or rules modifications, which makes that bar much lower. The difficulty in learning a game, if you stick within a series, plateaus. And so then every time a new game comes out, you're thinking, okay, all I need to worry about is how do we apply this existing model to this other scenario or event or war or whatever, incorporating just some of those newer rules. Now, to my mind, this makes a lot more sense to somebody who may have really limited time to read rules, but a lot of these games are also bigger, so the Next War can be pretty sizable. OCS can be gigantic. I don't think that's a surprising thing to say to anyone who's familiar with the game. Now, that's not to say that every game series that works like this is a big game like that, but I think these types of series certainly benefit folks that may have very limited time on the go to just read the rules or to sit down, where they really want to concentrate when they get the free time they have. If it's limited free time, they want to get to gaming. They don't want to spend extra time reading a rule book, an extra rule book, or whatever, or have to relearn a bunch of new rules. They want to use the rules they're familiar with. They can get the cliff notes here through these 13 pages, and you can get right into your big monster game or whatever it is you're playing. Of course, that, I don't mean to be exclusionary when I say that. Really, ultimately, anybody can play these games and do all these things without really a big deal, right? Depending on your game space situation. Now, if you look at OCS, which is a very good example of this situation, you have the series rules. The latest is version 4.3. It's been around for a few years. The changes between version 4.0 and 4.3 are relatively minor. They include some information where you can denote what's different between 4.2 or 4.3. And in this case, if we just look at actual rules, this is another case of, you're sitting at around 40-some pages of basic rules, and this is going to apply to, if I just, somewhere there's a bit of a jump between OCS games. This is a wiki page on Board Game Geek for OCS, where it's somewhere around here is when the game's published. it gets harder to use the latest rules because they were sort of built around older rules or something like that. That's a secondary understanding. I have not experienced that myself, just doing research on the series. But for the most part, you are talking about like 10 games or more where if you learn these 44 pages of rules, you're going to be in good shape. And then just as an example, here's a game-specific rule, so very much like Next War, each game in the series has its own set of stuff to read that will modify those main series rules. In this case, I'm looking at Case Blue, the most coveted game in the series, maybe, besides DAC 2. The Case Blue rules, game-specific rules, come in at about, 33 pages? 33 pages of rules. So if you combine that with 44, it's like, okay, 77 some pages of rules. Now, there are other booklets that come with Case Blue. Case Blue is this gigantic monster title, and we'll talk about that more in a little bit. But some of these other booklets are really just data for the game. So the weather table and supply table and terrain effects, like this is just data, right? It's a 24-page booklet, but it's data. The actual rules for Case Blue that are added to the standard series rules is 30-some pages, right? Now, by comparison, right, I could look at, here's a gamersarchive.net. This is where OCS stuff is stored. I could look at something else like Reluctant Enemies, which is a much smaller game, and its game-specific rules, if I go by the count up here, is 24 pages, and you could probably shave off, you can shave off a page or two because they're not actually rules, they're just supplemental stuff, which is still great to read, right? I love design development notes. I love them. All that kind of stuff is just in addition. So really, if we even remove some of the order of battle stuff, I mean, the reality is, for this game, I'm just scrolling through, just trying to find, like, where's the, okay, historical commentary. Here we go. I mean, we're really talking like 6, 7, 8 pages of additional rules. So, depending on how big of a bite you want to take into the OCS series, you actually have a pretty good set of, options where if you started with a smaller game, I like this, as a small game meant to serve as accessible introduction, that rules weight for the new game is relatively small. Now, for me, as I'm, I don't know if there's a point to this, right? I don't know that the two different ways to deal with series games, I don't know if one's better than the other, ultimately. I clearly like the Dark series. I like other games. I'm interested in OCS. I like Next War, though I don't have much experience actually playing it, besides messing around in Vassal a little bit. But I appreciate both angles, or both methodologies. But it does make me wonder, like, are there folks out there who prefer a specific type, right? I mean, it's great that, the Dark series are all a family, but I do have to read a whole rulebook every time I'm going to play one. I've got to read it through. I got to know what's different. I know things are going to be different. Whereas, in OCS, like, I shouldn't be too surprised at the fact that barrage, ground combat, all this stuff, for the most part, will work the same wherever I'm at in playing a game. It's going to work the same. I can usually should be able to count, for the most part, on these things largely being the same. And let those series rules just let me know what's a little bit, just a little bit different, and it might only be a few pages of stuff to worry about. So yeah, I mean, if you're listening to this and you actually have an opinion, I'd be interested to hear it. It's all good for me. I'm a lucky sort of person where I have plenty of gaming space. I can set up big games. I can leave it there for months at a time. So it's really just how much, rules burden do I bring on myself. And at this point, I'm working my way through different rule books, and I'm bringing them into my mind meld of game mechanic understanding. And I don't have a preference at the moment, but it is just interesting to see the utility difference between the two. And maybe the maybe one distinction is that if you like a series and you can dig deep into that, you just get that immediate satisfaction where, if you're a one-off purchaser and you buy the Dark Summer, you know that the rules for the Dark Summer have been handcrafted to fit this scenario, right? And maybe that's the weakness of stuff like OCS or Next War, where you are now taking situations and you have to filter them through the game system. If the game series rules are what they are, and you have to work within that framework. You can have the specific rules that might change certain things, but if you start to change too much, you invalidate the standard and advanced series rules maybe too much. So you still have to work within these grooves, work within this framework to represent the conflict simulation you're trying to achieve, right? Where something like the Dark Summer or the Dark Valley, is working within a basic design philosophy or methodology, but whatever chrome or special rules or whatever is needed to represent that conflict, that extra time is spent to get there. If I was more familiar with Mark Simonich's 40 series, I could probably talk to that. I think that's another example of one that is like the Dark series, where whether you're playing Ardennes 44 or Stalingrad 42 or Ukraine 43 or whatever, like, the rules are similar. They're not 100% the same, but they are similar. If I decide to just buy one, I can at least feel like I know this has been, they've attempted to design for Ukraine 43 to some satisfactory degree. So I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below about that. I really would like to bounce this off other people and see what you prefer, if you've run into issues one way or the other. I guess at the end of the day, I would expect most folks to simply say, yeah, it's all gravy. I like it either way. No big deal. I like peanut butter and chocolate, all that kind of stuff. It's all good. But something that I have been thinking about, because I've been reading a lot of rulebook PDFs lately, and it just got my mind to jogging on that. Now, this is probably a good time to segue into talking about OCS. And I know that several folks have put in comments of other videos in the past, put forth a desire for me to do some OCS stuff. Now, I do own Korea OCS, or OCS Korea, the latest version of that, whatever the latest version of that is, sometimes referred to as Korea 2, but it was never published with that name as Korea 2, however you want to look at it. So I have that. So looking at the list of OCS games, I do have Korea, the 2014 version of Korea: The Forgotten War. That was a pickup during a sale from Multiman a while ago. I got it as a sort of Christmas gift for my wife. Super cool. And I haven't gotten it to the table because it is kind of intimidating. A little, maybe it's more intimidating than it should be for me. I should be able to just jump right through it and work it out. But recently, I've had a little bit of downtime to do some reading. We were on a little mini vacation this past week, and I managed to get some quiet time during that duration, and I started to get actually sit down and work my way through the OCS rulebook, and it's really not that bad. And I think I knew that before. It's just a whole thing to actually look at playing some of these games, because they're pretty big. They're pretty big games. And it's not so bad. I mean, it all makes sense. There's nothing that I read that makes me go, oh no, this is terribly complicated. It all makes sense. And I'm really probably about let's see if I scroll down, I'm like halfway through, maybe probably a third of the way through the rule book from cover to cover, just really absorbing how it works. Ultimately, I've decided that I'm going to have to just set something up and push some counters around to really learn it. And so I have started a journey, down the rabbit hole on the OCS series. Now, everything I've read so far and looked at gets me going. I'm really into. I'm thinking through it. I'm like, oh yeah, I could totally see once you start applying this system to different conflicts, how cool it can get, and what can you try to do with it, and again, that benefit of a series game being, I can learn these rules, I can apply them to different situations, and have a pretty good feeling like I know what's up. I can play through and have a good time, and that's a really really cool feeling, right? Now, what's interesting and frustrating is that for one reason or another, due to logistics and the economics of it, at any given time, the games in this series are usually not in print. Fortunately, I have managed to nail down copies of different games in the series. They are on their way to me. And so in the future, probably not... sorry, I just had a dry throat cough that I think my microphone maybe picked up. I hope it didn't, but I'll have to remember to validate that. I'm losing my train of thought. Okay, so the games are on their way, and so at some point in the very near future, I will be trying to do some level of coverage for the OCS games. Now, the trick is going to be when I do that, when the time comes and I set something up and work my way through it, I simply cannot do it in the same style as I do some of these other games where I go in depth. If I do that, I will never get done with any of them. It doesn't even matter if I pick a small one like Smolensk. Each of these games is big enough in terms of the time investment that if I were to do super slow walkthroughs of everything I'm doing, we will be here forever. Now, the nice thing is, there are plenty of people who have created videos on OCS that can show you, I guess, as much as I would show you, and maybe do a better job of it, either in tutorials or a bunch of other things like that. What I would have to do if I did any of these, even looking at, like, if we started with a reduced scope one, okay, 4,560 minutes is a lot of time, right? That's still a lot of time, no matter which way you look at it. That's a huge amount of time. If you can even imagine for a second me trying to talk through every turn of a full campaign of Smolensk, what really would that even look like, right? Hunt, like, it would be dozens and dozens and dozens of video hours. And I know that that would get very boring for folks eventually. So when the time comes for me to cover OCS, I'm going to have to keep it very high level. I'm going to have to show you guys, if I do stuff on video, just snippets, just, a check-in, like, I do a video in parts where it maybe all of my coverage for Smolensk would be one video, one maybe hour-long video, and it is nothing but quick commentary, like every so many turns of the game or something like that, right? I mean, it would have to be something like that. And even this one, the campaign is 19 turns. I would have to do a video where I talk for 5 minutes about each turn and what I did and why I did what I did and how it turned out. And that would be how I cover this game. That would be the only way it really even makes sense to do it. Because if you just look at, this is I think it's either a single mapper or it's a two mapper. And when you look at the number of counters, and it looks like they clipped all of theirs, very nice. If you look at the counters, if you look at the number of hexes and the overall density, that would take me a while, right? That would take me a good while to cover everything like that. And as we look at the, it doesn't say the map size. I think I had looked it up the other day. It's either a single map or it's a two mapper. That kind of looks like a single map size, 22 by 34. But on the other hand, if I look at Beyond the Rhine, which is another game in the series, if I look at this and I try to look at the map, I think this works out to be, there's 4 maps. It works out that there's 5 normal size maps. So if the true Grand Campaign uses 4 of the 5 maps, and I think I understand why, there's like a special map sheet used for a Time for Trumpet scenario, or one of these. I can't remember exactly what it is. It's 4 maps, 70 turns. Those 4 maps all together is that's not even the full map. I need to find it. Campaign setup 2. There we go. So this is a huge, huge map. I simply could not show you guys every move of every unit, trying to tell you what I'm doing with that single unit, because the front is so big, right? It's like the whole Western Front almost. A slice of it, and all these units the whole way down the line in a lot of places. I couldn't do it, right? I simply could not talk about every single thing that I do. So while I am definitely interested in playing through OCS, when I do it, when the time comes that I start doing them, whichever ones I actually do on camera, that'll be interesting to see, it will be at a much higher level than my other video series. It will just have to be. And maybe I could do some videos where I do more in-depth stuff. Maybe for some of these games that have at least one very small scenario, I can do an in-depth coverage for a small scenario. But then if I end up playing a grand campaign, I would have to do it very, very differently. Some of these games are so big that it's going to take up a lot of my gaming room to do it. And because they take so long to play, they could literally take months for me to work through as a single person. Some of these are meant to be played by multiple people at a time. I know it says 2 players, but I think I had read somewhere that, like this one, or maybe a different one, it's like you really want 4 or 5 people playing it, or something like that. If I'm doing it all myself, it's going to take a long time. So it could even be, as an example, let's say I had Beyond the Rhine set up. I could be playing this in one area of my game room for several months, and maybe I'm playing other stuff and covering other games on a different table or a different side of my game room, just because, unless I did that, it would be damn near impossible to play anything else, basically. Here's a good picture of the Time for Trumpets map. This is what I meant. There's a specific map that you would use if you were playing a specific scenario covering the Battle of the Bulge. You would use this map if you weren't playing the Grand Campaign, and I assume it's because there are certain things they put on the map to help with something. I'm not exactly sure what, but you can see there's a bit of a focus here where in the north you have Antwerp, the rest of the line, and then you have the Ardennes region here, which, given that we just finished the Deadly Woods, it's kind of funny to look at this map and kind of go, oh yeah, this is where, you know, we did this. We played this. But there you go. So, yeah, I mean, I could play this, right? I could just play this scenario, and if you look at, again, the number of units, number of hexes, this is going to take a long time. It's going to be interesting when I get to this kind of stuff, for sure. I mean, I'm very much looking forward to trying all this stuff out, because I really like what I see of it and what I'm understanding of the rules and all of that. It is a major undertaking for sure, and I have to work my way through that. Now, here's the one thing that's such a bummer about this series, and I mentioned it a little bit earlier. A lot of these games are out of print, and it is, when you look at like what's the latest thing that is out that you can get, or, you know, when was the last time, what's the latest version of any given game? I guess that's what I'm really trying to get at. So the series started with Guderian's Blitzkrieg, but it got replaced by Guderian's Blitzkrieg 2, so you kind of, in my mind, I just ignore that. Enemy at the Gates has been incorporated into Case Blue, so you kind of forget about that. Tunisia became Tunisia 2, so you forget about that one. Hube's Pocket, it doesn't note this here, but this has been incorporated into the Third Winter, which is the newest game in the series about to be released. And then DAC became redundant because of DAC 2. So really you're looking at, like, okay, there's Burma. You know, the latest version of that came out in 2008. Sicily has been made redundant by Sicily 2, which came out in 2016. And then you have the rest of these, which are all, you know, unique, latest versions of whatever it is we're talking about. Korea, there's the North Africa DAC 2, Case Blue, Baltic Gap, Blitzkrieg Legend, blah, 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 blah. Now, if I were to tell, you know, if you wanted to know which of these games is in print right now, the answer is an easy one. There's not many. You have Blitzkrieg Legend, you have Beyond the Rhine, you have Smolensk, Hungarian Rhapsody, which was released last year, and then this one's about to go out, right? So like 4 out of what is really like, you know, 13 games that are, you know, part of the series. And the thing about it is, Multiman Publishing has not done a whole lot in the way of reprints lately. Or really, I guess, at all. When you really think of it, it's like, okay, any given game in the series, if it's been reprinted, maybe it's only been reprinted once after initial release, if you don't count the original version. So, Guderian's Blitzkrieg 2 has been printed twice, once in 2001, once in 2011, again, not counting the original version, but even if you did, this game came out in 1992, the new version came out almost 10 years later, and then 10 years later again, it was reprinted. Korea, 11 years later, it got reprinted, and then, you know, the rest of these have all been new releases. So if you were looking and saying, hey, I want to get into OCS, and I really would like to play a game that it interests me a lot, like North Africa, right? You really like North Africa. Well, it's out of print. Case Blue, very popular title in the series, covers a part of World War II that a lot of people are interested in. It's out of print. Now, you might think that's not too big of a problem, right? Because there's a secondary market. Well, my friend, let's go take a look at DAC 2. So I really like North Africa. I want to get a copy of this. You're going to be spending half a grand, $500 or more, I guess. But there are copies available for $400, $500. I am not in a position to spend $500 on a single game right now. That's even more expensive than when I bought my big World in Flames Super Deluxe package several years ago. This would be the most expensive game for me to buy, period. Now, I would like a copy of DAC 2, but whether or not I am ever able to get one is going to depend on many factors. The same is for Case Blue. And in fact, Case Blue is like, this would be the game I would be most interested in, honestly, out of the set. Like Case Blue and Guderian's Blitzkrieg 2, which can be played together, by the way, to make a super mega big game that I can fit in my game room. I figured it out. I can do it. There's this little picture here. I can do it. I can make this work on the gaming tables that I have. I can set this up. Totally can. But you need both games. This one, I mean, that's foreign currency, but similar to DAC 2, these usually sell for about $500 if someone's willing to part with their copy of Case Blue at all. That's $500 if it's punched and clipped or whatever, not mint, mind you. If it is used, it's $500. Now, the base purchase price from MMP would have been $240 some dollars or whatever. So to buy a new copy, it's twice as much as it would have been new because it's out of print. And even $250 is an expensive war game, right? That's pricey on its own, but you got a lot of stuff for it. You got a crap ton of maps. You got a crap ton of books, 10 counter sheets. I mean, you know, there's a lot of stuff that would come with a copy of Case Blue, right? If you manage to snag a copy from somebody. Enormous game, gigantic game. I mean, if you just look at these pictures, I mean, just absurdly huge game, right? But I am tempted. I would like to play it, but I can't afford a $500 copy of Case Blue. I mean, that's not going to happen. So what would be really nice is if they were willing to do a reprint, but based on what I've read online, it's unlikely for them to actually get another reprint or to get a reprint at all. Which is a bummer, because if you look at some of these year dates, we are coming up on the 10-year anniversary of some of these, right? It is now 10 years since the last time Guderian's Blitzkrieg 2 was published. Now, this one is a little bit cheaper. You can get a copy for $250, and I'm you know, that's maybe more doable right now. And you get a lot of good action for the East Front stuff. You get Moscow, the drive to Moscow as a part of this. So, you know, all of this stuff. You can read that. It's from October 41 until the spring of 1943. So there's a lot in this one as well. Oh, okay. So this is the combined. You know, that's a pretty big game when you're playing it like that. So this one, like, I'm interested in for sure, and would like to get a copy, but it's expensive. But this one, it's about due for a reprint. Case Blue has been printed once back in 2007, which is now 14 years ago, and I'm pretty sure that was the only printing of it. Yep, 2007 printing. It's due. It would be due for a reprint if you went on a decade, you know, timeline. But there's currently no plans to do a reprint. And I can understand that maybe the market for OCS is only so big, and all the people who wanted Case Blue have it up to a certain degree. Like the majority of people who would want Case Blue have a copy of Case Blue. But the problem is, now, for the people who are getting into OCS, they don't really have an option. right? They can't get Case Blue, not without spending too much money. It's too much. 500 is too much, right? I mean that's the nature of the market. It's out of print, and people, will get you for a high price if they're willing to sell it, and they think they can make the money back on it because they probably paid $500 for their copy of Case Blue. Your alternative is to get stuff like this, the Third Winter, which is coming out now from MMP. It's priced, you get it for $200. You're going to get a lot of game. Make no mistake, you're going to get a lot of game out of this. This is quite a large game also. It's going to be a lot of stuff. 8 counter sheets, so only a few shy from what Case Blue had. It's going to be a big game. It's going to be a really cool game, and I'll tell you, my copy should be on its way soon. I pre-ordered a copy of Third Winter, so we will get a look at this. We will bask in its glory at some point. But that's the closest thing to Case Blue that I can get myself right now, and that's my only option. And so I have to imagine for the people who have been into OCS for a really long time, they've managed to pick up every game in the series as they've come out. They can hold on to it. And any of these new games, like when we talk about the production pipeline limitations, if MMP is going to produce something and they want to sell it to people, right, it has to have a certain amount of audience for it. So when these other games that are going to come out in the series, Bagration, Hero City, Crimea, Normandy, Italy, Sea Lion, Czechoslovakia, all these kind of things. This one's kind of interesting to think about, right? A hypothetical. These games are going to be interesting to the people who already have all of these, or already know that they like OCS, and they already have Case Blue, right? They're happy. They have their copy of the coveted Case Blue and Guderian's Blitzkrieg 2. So them picking up these other games are just gravy. But if somebody is coming into this and going, well, I really like North Africa. I really like North Africa. This is out of their reach from 17 years ago. They can't get DAC 2. Unless there's a DAC 3 or there's a reprint of DAC 2. And so MMP is having to decide, or is stuck deciding, are they printing new stuff, knowing that there's a decent market, because anyone who likes these will probably like these, or are they going to, the opportunity cost is they're not going back, looking at Case Blue, checking out errata, updating counters, doing whatever, and then putting this in the production pipeline, and the only people who are going to buy it are people who missed out on Case Blue originally, like me, or folks that have maybe a damaged copy of Case Blue, or the diehard fans who are going to buy it anyway. And that might be a smaller set of people than who are potentially going to get Bagration, for instance. So from an economical standpoint, I can totally understand, yeah, we're not going to get a Case Blue reprint for those reasons, but gosh, I mean, it's like the sad thing about this is it may never be reprinted, and OCS will start to become a harder system just to work in, because you can't even get some of these games. Like, you can't even play them. And the ones that cover probably the most exciting parts of World War II, I guess, or the series of conflicts that are like, hey, if you're going to do an Operational World War II game, those are going to be the ones to really play or have a lot of fun with, like North Africa, like Case Blue, like the Drive on Moscow via Guderian's Blitzkrieg. Like, the hallmark campaigns of World War II, you can't even get in the system because they're old and not reprinted, and you're just playing these other sort of secondary or tertiary campaigns that might be a lot of fun on their own as standalone kind of situation that might be perfectly fun and awesome, but you're going to miss out on these, and that sucks. And what doesn't make sense to me, this is the one thing that I don't know if there's any good in me even talking about this, but what I would really wish they could do is simply go after the GMT thing and put a pre-order system in place on their website for folks just to see just to see who would buy Case Blue, right? Like how many copies of Case Blue do you need to sell? If it's 500, like GMT's P500 system, then okay, you say, hey, we need 500 orders, or it's not going to happen. But at least make it possible to find out what the level of engagement is. I have to imagine if you put up a pre-order page for Case Blue next week, you would at least get a couple hundred pre-orders. Maybe you wouldn't get 500 right away, but you would get a fairly large number of pre-orders. And maybe it would tick up enough that you could actually do it. But if you never ever do it, if MMP never does any of that, they're shooting themselves in the foot, right? I mean, to me, it seems like the case. Like, these are the most popular. When you talk about wargame, like, North Africa, very popular. East Front, very popular, right? Those are, everyone likes playing those sorts of games. You would be losing business if you could not get these very marketable games back on the market for people. And I realize that might hurt somebody's investment fund if they bought these games out of print to hold on to them just for resale value. But these games are meant to be played, man. Like, let's get them out here. Now, someone's going to tell me you can just go play Vassal, and that's true. I could technically never buy Case Blue, download the Vassal module, and I could probably just play that, right? I don't think there's anything. I think everything on the and I lost my link in here somewhere. I think everything that's on the series webpage repository of PDFs would allow me to play Case Blue in Vassal, or DAC 2 in Vassal, or whatever. That's all true. I don't like playing games in Vassal unless I own them. Like, I feel like that's sort of cheating the market a little bit. It feels dishonest. I would rather play a game on Vassal that I already own because I've paid to make the game in existence, I guess, is one way to look at it. So I definitely could circumvent that and just play Case Blue or DAC 2 or Guderian's Blitzkrieg in Vassal. But I would rather play these in person. I would rather have these set up on my gaming table because I just prefer that. I like that. I play some games on Vassal just to mess around, but if I'm really going to play it, I would rather play it in person. So I don't know. So that's my frustration, and that frustration goes to even some of these other games like Reluctant Enemies, or Sicily, or Tunisia, where those are the games that are recommended as the entry point for the series, the games that are best for beginners, and they're out of print as well. Now, you could probably get them for better prices, generally, than the coveted games. Well, this Tunisia 2 is looking kind of expensive. Sicily 2, well, okay, so no copy to be found at the moment. Spoilers, I have found copies of some of these games, and I am in the process of procuring them. So my intention is to actually play these on the table as excuse me, as I can get them. But that's going to be in time, and we'll take a look at those as they manage to show up. So, yeah, I don't know. The OCS series, guys, I am getting ready to take the plunge. I am frustrated by everything. I spent a lot of free time recently researching all these games and looking at which ones are available and how can I get a copy of which ones and what makes sense. Some of this is, I got a little extra spending money that I could, procure some stuff. But gosh, I mean, what a tricky situation. So MMP, guys, would really be cool if you just started fielding some reprint options. You can't get money if you're not willing to reprint stuff, I guess. Like, I know a bunch of people managed to put the order in for this. Let's see if I can get... There you go. You can see, okay, there's Beyond the Rhine. That's in print. Burma Bagged. I actually snagged one of these. So this came online Tuesday. I want to say it was Tuesday, and it was just me researching the series, and this became available in their catalog on here, a bagged version of Burma, and I snagged a copy before it went out, and it sold out in like a day and a half. So somehow they have the components laying around to actually create a bagged version of Burma without the box and without dice. So they have the counter sheets and rule booklet and all that stuff. And I picked that up. I snagged it. So I got that coming, thank goodness, before it went out. But it's like, okay, Baltic Gap, sold out. Burma, sold out. Case Blue, sold out. DAC, sold out. Sold out. Okay, that's a new one, so it makes sense that that's in print. Folks must not be buying Forgotten War very much. They just have some of these still, I guess. Sicily 2 sold out. Reluctant Enemy sold out. Smolensk is still in. That's a recent title. This Blitzkrieg Legend is probably the oldest one that is still available. But I'm sure it's going to go out of print soon enough, or it's going to sell out soon enough. There's probably only so many of these, right? Tunisia is sold out. Another one of the, hey, this is great for newbies. Yeah, sold out. And then this was the third winter pre-order. So they're shipping now to pre-order people. I'm one of those, so hopefully it'll be coming soon. Pre-orders needed 550, or pre-orders taken almost 900. So what kills me about this is like every single one of these sold out games should have a pre-order counter on them. Absolutely, every single one of them should. And so even if it's like, okay, it's open for pre-orders, we need 550, maybe for some of these we need even more than that, we need 600. There is nothing stopping them from making a pre-order available for any of these. Nothing stopping them. You could say, but Steve, they got to do some extra work, they've got to get the counter sheets fixed up, they might need to look at some errata, incorporate that in the rulebook, and create new PDFs. Okay, that's fine. They don't have to do that until they get the pre-orders they need, and sometime after that. Because just because it reached the maximum pre-orders doesn't mean that they have to start doing a whole lot of work on it just yet. They can do it like GMT and have a schedule and say, hey, listen, Guderian's Blitzkrieg, hit the pre-order number after Case Blue, but Case Blue is going to take a little bit of extra work, so we're going to do this. We're going to fulfill our pre-orders first, or we're going to get the work done on this one first because it's not as much work, and then whichever ones get into the print pipeline, someone will decide that within the company. But like, it just boggles my mind. They have all of these out of print games that there's certainly a desire for them. At least these three, Case Blue, DAC, and Guderian's Blitzkrieg, for sure. There's a desire for these. They need to get a pre-order going for a reprint. They've got to do it, right? I mean, it boggles my mind that they have not done that yet. I think maybe they just changed their website, their web storefront, to this format, this new web page. The old one looked very, very different. Maybe now that they've got this set up, they can accommodate what I described better, and they're just waiting to do it. So you and me, guys, let's keep our fingers crossed that a Case Blue, DAC 2, Guderian's Blitzkrieg 2 reprint, pre-order happens at some point in the near future. And all of you guys who are like me saying, dang it, I wish I could get a copy of these, will be able to in the near future. And by near future, I mean like, years from now, because it would take years for all of these to be reprinted and come out and all of that. But I would rather that happen than having to wait around until I sell a kidney to get a copy of one of these games, right? That's kind of where I'm at. Okay, this video is getting awfully long. The last topic I was going to bring up, and you just heard me ramble about OCS for a really long time. I'm sorry about that. The last thing I was going to talk about is rulebook complexity. And because this is a very long video, I will do a very abbreviated version of this discussion. Um, as I'm dealing with learning OCS, what's funny is I look at these rules, these 44 pages of rules, and what I realize is there's not that much complexity to it ultimately. Like it was intimidating, and it's a whole bunch of more rules to learn and to understand. But truly, the actual rules themselves are not that hard to understand. The general concepts, the modes, being move mode versus combat mode, how ground movement works, that's straightforward. Reaction makes sense. Overrun is a little interesting. It's a little bit different than I would have thought it was based on other games. But all these things certainly make a whole lot of sense. And when you think about like the 44 pages plus the 10 or 15 whatever pages, like those rules are not, it's ultimately not that complex, and the game just takes a long time to play because there's a lot going on. And if I compare that to World in Flames, just as an example, the rules come out to be like almost 100 pages of rules, 86 pages of rules. And truly, World in Flames is not that complicated either, but what makes World in Flames complex in a labor at the game table in terms of I'm mentally exhausted when I'm done playing World in Flames in a given day that I play it with my buddies, is because you are managing so much stuff. You are managing, you're doing lending. You got to remember lending. You got to know all the political rules and U.S. entry. You have to know how to do all the naval stuff, how to do all the ground stuff in relative detail. You have to know all the production, all the nuances of aircraft rules, offensive points if you're playing with that optional rule, all the optional rules, I guess, for WIF makes things very complicated. And when you're actually playing at the table, because World in Flames is a grand strategic game ultimately, or a big strategic game, you are managing a lot of different things. Even if you're not doing a lot of them, you're managing many different things, right? The number of variables is larger, not necessarily, or the number of types of variables, I guess, you're contemplating is more than a game that's simply operational like OCS. So it's like I'm worried about, as the Commonwealth, my supply line to Egypt, and whether or not I have units in Egypt, and do I have ships in the Mediterranean to help with shore bombardment, and do I have anti-tank and artillery there? And so you get this, like, there's a huge list of things that you're kind of understanding and operating with that makes that complex. The thinking is complex, the strategic thinking over time in terms of what you're building in World in Flames makes it complex, and how all these different mechanics kind of roll together makes it very complex and very exhausting. And so while World in Flames can maybe be completed in a big grand campaign with your buddies, you can maybe get through in 100 hours or more, or whatever it ends up being for people. All of those hours are like intense in some ways. There's a lot going on at any given time. There's a lot of different things to consider. And when I look at OCS, and I think, and this will prove out to be true or false once I'm really in the thick of things, ultimately, while OCS has naval power, and while it has air stuff as well, because it's operational in nature, more so than just World in Flames, which has some operational stuff, but it's very high level. Like, in some ways, I think of OCS as much less complex, based on my reading of the rules so far, just knowing that, like, most of what I'm going to be doing in any given OCS game is movement, combat, supply determination stuff. I mean, there's barrage and air mixed in there, but basically the things that I'm going to be trying to achieve on any given turn is moving my units, trying to attack, maybe make some exploitations possible with my reserve units, and make sure I don't screw up my supply, and I manage my supply, my tokens for supply, and the logistics surrounding that. And when I think about it, it's like it doesn't matter that, like, if I were to play Case Blue in my game room, it wouldn't matter that Case Blue plus Guderian's Blitzkrieg stretches diagonally from one corner of the room to the other. That the individual actions across all of those maps won't be that complex. It won't be that complicated. I will kind of know what I'm doing pretty well down the line, or at least I'll have a pretty good idea of what I'm trying to achieve, and how I'm going to do it. And there may be strategic thought processes going on, but I'm just cycling through the movement, combat, supply, shepherding type of stuff over the life of the game. And there's some crossover point where, World in Flames can be overwhelming because there's so much going on. Even if you're only doing some of those things onesie twosie, there's just a lot to consider. Here it's sort of the inverse, right? You're talking like a huge expanse of the Eastern Front in Case Blue, or Guderian's Blitzkrieg 2, and everything that you're doing is going to be operating on those, again, move, combat, supply shepherding, those main three things, but you're doing that a lot. And if you're playing it solo, you're doing that a lot across a huge map. And so what I feel like is, once I get these games set up and I'm really trying to hammer my way through OCS, I wonder, am I going to run into a situation where the huge amount of stuff that I'm doing, but the lack of complexity, or the less complex than I'm used to for WIF or other games, will that make it, I hope it doesn't become like, oh, this is just monotonous, but I really don't know. Or will it just be, because it's not as complex, my mental fatigue will be less, and so that I'll just have a nice, steady, sort of fun level as I'm just ratcheting through the player actions, moving stuff, attacking, doing all of those actions at a pretty decent clip, and I'm just having fun riding that wave of action after action after action playing through, and it's interesting. Before I take this plunge into OCS, trying to make that expectation, is this going to be the way it goes? How will this compare to other game experiences that are so big, right? These monster experiences. Because World in Flames is a monster game, but its scope is different than, say, Case Blue or DAC 2 or whatever it is, that you're playing. And I'm sure someone's grinding their teeth by me saying DAC instead of DAK, or Desert Army Corps, or Africa Corps. But deal with it. But playing any of those games, like, they're monster games, you're doing a lot of stuff, but what it is that you're doing and the stuff that you're thinking about, when you talk about complexity, some of these games may be rated as really high complexity, but it makes me wonder, like, what's your scale, right? Case Blue is 4.58 on Board Game Geek out of 5. World in Flames, by comparison, just going out, this one is marked as 4.63. So if you go off Board Game Geek, which I probably would not because it's ephemeral in so many ways, World in Flames would be more complex. And at first blush, I would say that's probably true, just because there's so many different types of things going on when you're talking about World War II across the globe, as compared to something that is strictly operational. But if you have experience in both game systems, if you've played World in Flames, if you've played Case Blue, if you've played any of the bigger OCS games, please let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Peter, if you're watching this, I would be interested to hear what you have to say on this, because I'm obviously coming at it from one angle. I'm used to WIF. I like World in Flames a lot. This is a whole different ball game for me. I've been enticed by other operational games. I still do like lighter operational games, like the Dark series, for instance. But I do see OCS as a place to go if I want to ratchet up the complexity a little bit if I want that more in-depth game experience, and I'm looking forward to trying it out. But that's all still ahead of me. Maybe I'll burn out on it. Maybe I'll figure out which ones I really like versus the ones I like less. But I've got to figure all that that stuff out. So yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. I think I'm going to end this ramble because we're going on an hour and 20 minutes, and I'm sure you're sick of hearing my voice after so long. But we do have the Dark Summer coming up. I'm looking forward to playing that. So a smaller scale operational game for sure. Not as complex as OCS by that stretch, I would think. But should be a lot of fun, and we should be able to get through it pretty quickly. So that's still coming. Will be coming up here very soon. But until then, I hope you guys are cool being patient. I will have that up very soon, I hope. So thanks for watching this. These kind of videos, they're just nice, low key chit-chattering about stuff. It's the kind of material I would do a stream on, but I just can't work my schedule around a live stream. It's just easier if I can find the spare time to sit down, relax, and talk, or ramble as the case is, that I can do these videos. But if you stuck through the whole thing, really appreciate it. If you're a diehard watcher of the channel or whatever, comment. I appreciate the comments a lot. It's good to interface with you guys. It's a big part of why I do these videos in the first place, is just being able to talk with you guys and get feedback and see what's up. So yeah, let me know what you think of OCS. Let me know what you think of game complexity. Let me know what you think about the different types of series games and what that means from a game design standpoint, and what you prefer, or if it's all gravy. Yeah, let's do that. Let's talk to it, guys. Thanks for watching. Take care. We'll see you in another video. Yeah, keep on gaming, guys.